Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Latino Voices Community Conversation. My name is Tim Russell, VP Community Engagement and Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for WTTW and WFMT, and welcome to today's Chicago Tonight Latino Voices. WTTW is committed to producing and presenting trusted best-in-class content fueled by distinctly Chicago sensibility. We have served as Chicago's window to the world, and our purpose is to enrich lives, engage communities, and inspire exploration. One of our core values is diversity and equity. We celebrate differences, embrace inclusivity, and strive for equity. The stories we tell, as well as the people in front of and behind the camera and microphone, reflect the myriad of faces and voices of our region. With the rise of violence in Chicago, today's conversation is truly relevant. Today, we will discuss local investments in summer youth programs across the city, while also focusing on communities demanding more resources and investment to help combat violence in their area. Support for Chicago Tonight Latino Voices is provided by Allstate and the Chicago Community Trust. Additional support is provided by the Abe and Ida Cooper Foundation, the Field Foundation of Illinois, Lloyd A. Fry Foundation, Julian Grace Foundation, and Judy and John McCarter. Now I would like to welcome Joanna Hernandez.
And hello and welcome to Chicago Tonight Latino Voices, a WTTW News Community Conversation. Thank you for spending your evening with us. I'm Joanna Hernandez, reporter for WTTW Chicago Tonight. As we all know, summer is around the corner for Chicago public school students. Organizations across Chicago are preparing for youth programming through sports, arts, and academic support for students. Unfortunately, that also comes with the challenges of keeping youth safe and engaged amid the rise of summer violence in Chicago. According to U Chicago Urban Labs, there are about twice as many shootings on days with a temperature of more than 85 degrees than there are on days with reading of less than 50 degrees. But investment in youth and communities with high crime has proven effective in helping combat that violence. Tonight, we're discussing different kinds of investments in youth from local organizations, while also touching on communities calling on more outside resources and investment in their area. Now, we're all in listen-only mode, but that doesn't mean you can't be part of the conversation. We want to hear from you, so please chime in on the chat function with your questions and comments. They are very much encouraged. I'll be sure to share them with our guest. And speaking of a guest, I would like to introduce our panel and thank them for taking time out of their busy schedule to talk to us. Now we start off with Mayra Martinez, youth organizer, supervisor for youth programs with Increase the Peace. Then we have Dr. Elias Alonzo, principal for the Instituto Health Sciences Career Academy of Instituto del Progreso Latino. And then we have Pablo Ramirez, co-founder and board president of the Pilsen Arts Community House. Now, thank you everyone for joining me today. Now, first, while I briefly introduced each of you, I want to go around and in a couple sentences, share a bit about your background and your organization. Mayra, let's start with you.
Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. Mayra, I am currently a youth organizing supervisor with Increase the Peace. So Increase the Peace started off in 2016 when a young girl got shot and killed right in back of the Yards neighborhood. So I've been with the organization as a youth in the program since I was 14, and then later began becoming an organizer and instructing the youth in the program at 19 years old. So that's just a testimony to how powerful those resources can be. Wow. That's a bit of me.
Oh, that's awesome. Dr. Alonzo, can you tell me a little bit about you?
Yes, good evening, and thank you for giving us this opportunity. I serve right now as the principal for Instituto Health Sciences Career Academy, and actually also the principal of Instituto Justice Leadership Academy, an option school in Pilsen. We are under the umbrella of Instituto del Progreso Latino, which is really dedicated at being a hub for our community in providing educational and workforce experiences for our community to engage them and keep them busy. For me, it's very important that, again, our high schools serve to provide our students with a safe haven and an opportunity to continue their progress in education. Instituto del Progreso Latino is about to observe its 45th year anniversary in existence in the community, and we want to continue to provide that service to our community.
Thank you for sharing that. How about you, Pablo?
Well, Pablo Ramirez, I'm one of the founders and the president of the organization, Pilsen Arts and Community House. Grew up in Pilsen, admiring all the beautiful artwork, and that's what kind of inspired us to be here with open doors for community, for the youth, because it's such a big necessity, right? It's one of the vehicles that people could get in and get away from, the violence. So happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, that's awesome. So there's so much to talk about. And Mayra, I just want to go back to you. I mean, you were talking a little bit about growing up and being part of programs. Now, tell me a little bit about Increase the Peace and the type of programs that are offered.
Yes, so at first, with Increase the Peace, we had a program for 14 to 18-year-olds. So that's through After School Matters, actually. That's the program that I joined. And then we had this kind of transitional thing with one summer where if the youth have already turned 18 and they've gotten enough experience to do more in the community, they move on to the One Summer Chicago program, which is for 18 to 24-year-olds. So we're really big on investing in youth and maintaining, sustaining relationships with them to see them grow, especially hiring youth who need the safe spaces, who need the opportunity to really see the leadership that they can hold within their own communities. With Increase the Peace, we not only serve youth and give them safe spaces, but we also use their talent, use their leadership skills to provide resources for the community. So for example, we started our public health ambassadors program during the, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the photos.
Are these the photos? Yes, are these the photos? This is great.
Yeah, so through our programs, these youth have been taking on a lot of resource extensions to communities such as Back of the Yards, Little Village, Brighton Park. So for example, during the pandemic, we saw that there was a need to equitably distribute the vaccines. So in 3 weeks, I believe 6 of our youth, our public health ambassadors, were able to register about 3,000 people for their first COVID-19 vaccine, 100% youth led. We're able to serve about 300 families through food services. We also have rental assistance intake specialists through La Casa Norte, which is our fiscal agent. And we have 2 youth, Manny and Javi, if they're watching, who've helped that team, right? Like literally youth ages 14 to 24 doing this great work and extending community resources, but also, developing their leadership skills and giving them that safe space to be themselves.
I can tell you're really passionate about it. And Pablo, I want to go to you. The Pilsen Arts Community House is open to people of all ages. We also have some photos here that we have to share. Now, what has the journey been like to get the youth involved?
I think it's a little bit of a difficult journey to have our own programming in there. But as you could see, there are plenty of other people that come to our space. And that's the beauty of our space, that it's an open house, right? For other organizations that are already doing the work. And you see the wonderful pictures of the book readings, the poetry, the just people giving tours and wanting to learn about Pilsen and the area and the neighborhood. I mean, it's really what kept me sane growing up in Pilsen, and a lot of the youth, right? They're able to come in and find something that inspires them, and it's a beautiful journey.
And what's that connection been like in terms of going out to the community and being like, hey, like, come get involved in the program?
I mean, I think that's why we leave it to other people, right? And we have them coordinate the things, and then they come to us, where we've been able to have like the students of Benito Juarez have an exhibit in a formal gallery setting. I think just given that opportunity where young artists could come in and showcase their work and leave prints and kind of start like that business mentality, just wanting to be creators and wanting to be, motivators. And I think a lot of people come through straight out of the programming like Yo Locali, and we've been able to exhibit their artwork. And so I think it's through the partnerships that we really kind of have been thriving. Even when we were a gallery, that was a big focus. And now as the organization, obviously, we hope to move that forward.
And you were even talking about that art has played a big part in your life. Has it also been amazing or rewarding to see students, kids, do art and probably not think that they could create something like that?
Yeah, we see the kids like at 8 and then later on at 18, right, having a show. We've been able through the last 10 years of the work that we've been doing see that progress, right? And see people be able to come in and pop up and do vending events. Just having that space is so necessary, right? And we don't have big backing or big funding, and that's what's sad, that a lot of people don't give to these smaller organizations, and we do miracles, just like everything, like Increase the Peace, right? We just create so much for the community that we need to keep funding it. We need to keep doing it.
I understand. And Dr. Alonzo, I want to go to you. It's about to be summer break. Can you tell me about what opportunities are there for the youth in the summer months? Is it mostly just academic?
No, it's not. I think one of the things that's very important to us at Instituto is making sure that our students are engaged in more than just in the classroom. One of our core values is service. Service to the community and giving back. We believe in doing everything as a family. It is truth that it does take a village to do the work that we have to do. So our students are participating in everything from also working with One Summer Chicago. We are also part of Project Evolve, which is a summer program associated with Frida Kahlo organization, where our students are engaged on a daily basis. We just had students return from both Mexico and from Panama, where they worked with Medical Wings International, where they work with Doctors Without Borders on providing services both in Morelos and again in Panama. Our students are very much about being engaged and really garnering new experiences so that that's something that they can do not only for themselves, but to give back to the community. So again, we are doing all the workforce training and engagement. We are not simply just working at the academic, which is also needed, but it's also making sure that our students stay engaged in many different experiences that give back to the community.
And you talked about first experiences. What's that like for you to see some of these kids who live in the neighborhood, leave the country or do different things they've never done before?
Well, and I think that's one of the important parts of equity is giving our students, sometimes they don't get a chance to travel more than maybe 10 blocks from where they live right now. And I mean, we're so close to downtown and other places where they can experience so many different things that hopefully lead them to a better existence and being able to get back into the community and to stay safe. Sometimes part of the issue that we have is that our students are stuck in one space that limits them, and sometimes they find themselves frustrated and they can't do anything more than maybe find themselves in those trouble areas or those trouble spots. So by doing this, it gives them a sense of accomplishment, it gives them a sense of belonging, and it gives them voice to what they do. Again, our students have gone to our senior citizens home and provided some benefits to, again, our senior citizens, our veterans. It's just staying engaged and making sure that giving back to the community is important.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I also want to remind viewers that you can go ahead and ask questions whenever in the chat function. Now, Mayra, I want to go back to you. Now, you had mentioned that you participated in Increase the Programs, Increase the Peace, correct? Am I saying it right? Okay, so I just want to go back and I want you to share a little bit about what was that impact growing up? What led you to where you are now?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. So when I first entered the program, like I said, I was 14. And I remember at that time, my mom, she was immigrant, my dad, alcoholic. And for the first time, my mom separated from my dad. And I had all this freedom because she had to travel 2 hours just to provide for myself and my younger sister. So I had all this free time, and I remember not knowing the streets that I lived in. I don't remember where Damon was, where Western was. So I was so isolated from the world. But also I was now entering high school. So with all this freedom, I didn't know where to go. I didn't know which spaces to be in. And I had a hard time finding those spaces, but I did enter the Increase the Peace program. And not only was I exposed to my community and how big the world was, but I was also exposed to the lack of resources, poverty, the challenges that not only I faced, but my school peers faced, my neighbors faced, especially with the violence. I remember being a part of the program and thinking of solutions that summer when I was 14, creating campouts with the rest of the Increase the Peace team, where we just kind of held safe spaces in the hottest spots in our neighborhood. So by hotspots, I mean like where the most shootings happen. I remember statistically Fridays after 5 p.m., that's when the most shootings happened at that time. So we would camp out, that's what we call them, camp out, from I believe 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. and, kind of reclaim the streets as our own. And it was 100% youth led, straight out of pocket, organized community, organized message, organized people who had the same passion as we all did. So through that program, I learned how to create an event, how to organize community, and how to just, remain hopeful, right? Because we see all this violence and we become desensitized to it. But when you have all of these youth and you give them the space to reimagine a healed city, they'll take that opportunity. I truly believe that when you give somebody the choice to do the right thing, they will. And I feel like that's what we do through our programs, as well as, the school, Dr. Alonzo and Pablo, like that's amazing to hear those programs as well.
That's very powerful what you just shared. And Pablo, I want to go to you. We talked a little bit about it, but what is some of the changes that you've seen for those who have participated and gone to do these art programs?
Well, I think art is everything for people. I mean, it changes their lives. It changes just the even in a corporate space, right? If you're an artistic mind, you could thrive. And I think that's the thing. And sometimes it's like, what I do, it's like I'm a union organizer as well, right? I'm not just here, I'm out there speaking to workers and signing up to the union or bargaining contracts. And I think that's art plays a lot of roles. It lets you use the other side of the brain, right? It lets you experiment. I think it's open to other worlds and other mediums, and it's just it's a beautiful thing. It's hard. I mean, I guess I could talk about it for hours, but it's important to just have those spaces and to have that time. And sometimes it's to get away, right? And it's to unwind, to create music. I mean, I think all these things are things that the youth want to do, and they all thrive when given the opportunity. When we're doing a mural in Pilsen and we say, hey, community, get involved, people from 4-year-old to 12-year-old to, the abuelitas come in and they want to paint a little part of it just to say that they were part of it, because they know how important murals are to the community and they know they're going to last, right? And if not, we're going to paint another mural that's even better than the last one, and it's going to be able to thrive there. So
do you feel like it has even opened communication between kids and their parents? I think maybe at some points, specifically, let's talk about like graffiti, it had such a misconception or a bad rep, but now I feel like now it's seen so differently now. Do you see that there's a better connection with, kids going to their parents and like, look what I created?
Yeah, I think so. I think if the people that grew up in the neighborhood, they understand how important art is. So I think when people see that their kids are creative, right? They want to bring them to our space, right? They want to get them involved. And I think because it's that outlet, it's like, oh, my kid could do this, right? And I think that's what's so important, and that we do see that all the time. And it does bridge that gap, right? A lot of people are into music, and that's very, very important. But the physical creating of artwork, painting, drawing, ceramics, that's real. I've seen a lot of uptick in all those things, and I think that's really important to keep alive in our neighborhood.
Mayra, see your hand up. Do you want to say something?
Yes, thank you so much for bringing that up, Pablo, because it really sparked something in me. I remember during the program I was in, I was a really angry and feisty kid. And that's energy, right? So a lot of these youth who are in our neighborhoods and our communities are angry. They've been through a lot of things, a lot of traumatic experiences, especially now during the pandemic, to be isolated from home and like stripped away from those resources. That does build anger, and you do need an outlet. So I feel like that's why our programs are so important, because those youth can channel that anger in the right way. Being angry is not a bad thing. It's just how you channel it and how you're guided into channeling that. So I just wanted to say that really quickly.
And you know, someone wrote in the comment, Mayra is such an inspiring, inspirational instructor. We are super proud of to have her as an instructor. So that's great. And I want to go to you, Dr. Alonzo. Someone had mentioned a question here. Why don't we have enough mentorship programs for Latinos like the African American community has?
Well, and I think what both Pablo and Mayra are talking about in the work that we do is giving voice to, again, the people we serve. It's giving voice to our students, to our parents, or our abuelos. It's really important that we do that. And I think that sometimes, again, our community sometimes doesn't know how to get that voice. And that's why it's very important that organizations such as ours are involved in providing that leadership, and we need more. I also, son of immigrant, parents, my dad didn't know how to advocate for me at school. Didn't know how to advocate me in certain situations because he didn't have that foundation or that schooling from where he came. So a lot of times we're having the same thing now. We have students coming in from Guatemala, El Salvador that are refugees or other Latin American countries. They come here to a new environment and they don't know what to do. Who's going to help them out? And that's why it's really important that we develop these programs, that we come together. And to the question about why don't we have more mentorship programs or as such, and that's because of that. We need to build that. We need to build the opportunity to be able to come together and be the voice and teach people how to be the voice.
I mean, I was my parents' translator growing up. So I definitely understand that. And Pablo, I want to go back to you. I want to ask you, what was it like for you growing up in Pilsen? Tell me a little bit about that.
I mean, I think it was beautiful. I mean, it was, you knew there was areas you couldn't go, right? But I was fortunate enough for my mother to be involved in the arts and with artists. And I grew up with, musicians, and I grew up with Casaslan, where there was like cultural programming for the neighborhood, where people could exhibit, where people could come dance and do theater and practice theater. And, I was in theater as well in Latino Chicago. And I think that was a big influence on me. But just having the murals and having these people as friends, it shaped my life and changed my life. And, I continue in that path and hope other people do as well. So
I have dogs too, don't worry. Like, I completely understand. Did you also see that, it seems like you were very, very involved in the arts and growing up in music, and that sounds awesome. But did you have friends whose maybe life was different in the community?
like different in that they didn't have those things.
They didn't have those things, correct?
Yeah, I think it is different, right? And we all had friends that kind of gone down a different path because of those things. But fortunately, that's not a lot of the people that I was hanging out with. But we always saw it. We're always, to this day, right? Like, people without those outlets are going to be out here, and they got to find other outlets. And I think that's increase the peace, the schools. I mean, I think we got good schools, we got good art programming, we're doing a lot, and it's still not enough, right? And I think that politicians, they always saying like, we're gonna help small businesses, but they don't help them. We want to help these organizations, but they don't really go to bat for us. And I think, they always want us to do things for them and make them look good. And I think that's where we got it twisted, right? I think we need to invest in our communities. We need to invest in these youth. Let's buy them paintbrushes. Let's buy them spray paint even, let's find areas for them to be able to paint and outlet and write and get community involved and say, hey, this is a wall that's terrible right here. Let's fix it, right? We've been able to go to local businesses and even restaurants that maybe you're struggling or whatever and be like, hey, let's paint your wall and maybe this is going to attract some attention. So there's opportunities for all of us to come together. But I think we get caught up in all the work that we have to do just to survive and pay bills, that we don't get to meet the people with the Increase the Peace, right? To make those connections with the Instituto. But that's why we're here, right? And that's why we're discussing and dialoguing.
That's very true. And Dr. Alonzo, I want to go to your school falls in between Pilsen and Little Village. What challenges do the youth face in those neighborhoods? What do you see?
Well, I think a lot of this is our youth, our kids, they're really looking for a place to belong. And that's something that right now is a challenge for them. And that's why sometimes they fall down the wrong path, is because they're looking for where to belong. A lot of our children right now are dealing with a lot of issues related to mental health and anxiety. And that's coming not out of just even the pandemic, just in general with the environment. And when they don't know who to turn to, sometimes again, they fall prey to sometimes things that they seem easy or that are going to be a quick fix. And in the end, end up being something a little bit more harmful to them. So that's why it's important to have these programs. It really is. It's really important to keep the students engaged and give them a sense of belonging, and also provide them with those services. That I'm going to add to what Pablo is saying. Again, if we need, again, our stakeholders and politicians and so forth, they need to help us up and step up, especially with right now with a lot of the mental health issues that you hear on a daily basis. There's also issues with domestic abuse, parenting. So our parents don't know, how to handle certain situations, because again, these are unique and they're part of our time. They're part of the trauma that right now all of us are going through.
It's like breaking the generational trauma that's been there for decades and try to teach it in a healthy way. And Mayra, I want to go to you. You're a young adult. What kind of investment is still needed in the neighborhoods? Would you say?
I feel like a lot of investments are needed in my neighborhood. Are you talking about specifically my neighborhood, or maybe like
you can talk about your neighborhood or the neighborhoods around you?
Yeah, I think I work, pretty much citywide. Right now I'm focused on La Villita, Brighton Park, Pilsen. But of course, never forget my own community, Back of the Yards. I feel like as a youth organizer, the more I speak with youth and connect with them, I'm seeing this trend of financial instability, lack of parental supervision. And I think that it's mainly that, kind of echoing what Dr. Alonzo said, generational trauma, mental health services. I remember when I was younger, my mom, for some reason, she called support for me, right? Because I didn't want to go to this doctor's appointment. And they took me to a mental health institute to join this program, all girls, and talk about generational trauma, healing, like a whole group therapy program for 2 weeks. And I had to travel for those 2 weeks about 45 minutes to get to that institute, when I could have just maybe gone to a 15-minute walk the most in my own neighborhood. So lack of mental health institutes, of course, also lack of safe spaces, community centers, youth jobs. Although you can get a small stipend, I definitely think that youth should be paid more, because we all have things to do. I remember with my After School Matters paycheck through Increase the Peace, I would help my mom with her bills, water, gas, all of those things. So those struggles are definitely real. And I think that's what investments are needed in the community. Funding it goes a long way. So yeah, that's what I can think of.
Those are really good points. Now I want to go back to a little tough topic, and we started touching on, unfortunately, as we all know, shootings and other crimes go up in the summer, especially on summer days, many times having a direct impact on Chicago's youth. Now, Dr. Alonzo, have upticks in violence affected the way your programs can operate during summer months? I know I'm working on a series, and I saw that last year was one of the deadliest years for Chicago when it comes to homicides.
I'm going to say that we actually have not lost engagement because of, and just again, last week I had a shooting down the street on 23rd and Western. And it is part of our environment, sadly. But that's why I think, again, these organizations, these groups, we need to come together to provide that shelter, to sort of stop that, to abate that, so that, again, students have a safe place to go. And us working together and sort of form that network of safety for our students, so that they know that this is a place I can step into and it's a safe environment, and get away from these things. We need to continue to provide a lot of communication and information for our parents, and even our supports that we have, working with law enforcement and working with other community services, so that, again, we have to stop this. This is something we all have to, take a stand and we're losing too many young people, and too many young people getting involved in something that, again, they should be in a better place. And it's really important that, again, awareness, communication, working together is really going to be the answer to really resolving some of this.
You feel that in your heart.
Yes, definitely. I'm somebody that grew up on the South Side, where, again, I wasn't supposed to get out of the South Side. Most of us were never going to get past maybe a high school education, even if at that. And we had the same challenges, Mayra, you had, I had, where, again, that help wasn't there for us. And if your parents couldn't find a way to do that, I also, my outlet was art. So that is something that, what I was speaking about, it's important. Those are those things that we need to find for our young people, again, so that we can help them overcome, again, the trauma, their environment, and some of the bad roads that they take.
And Mayra, I want to go to you because it's undeniable that in the news you just can't look away sometimes, right? So it almost seems like every day a young person loses their life to gun violence. Can you tell me a little bit about what are some of the things that the people who participate in the programs tell you? Do you talk about what's going on in the neighborhood? Do you talk about the violence? What do they say?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of young people, even in our program, who have passed away due to gun violence. It's really unfortunate, but those are the realities that we're facing. So oftentimes we make it a routine, we make it a part of our program to have a peace circle. And recently, there was a shooting on 48th and Ada. And in one of those photos, actually, that was demonstrated, we were in a circle and we were talking about what happened, like what the youth thought, what they felt that day, what they were even doing that day. And I think that that's important to do in these spaces, because oftentimes we don't do that at home. We don't have the space to express how we're feeling, which I think is the reason why we are so desensitized sometimes to the violence in Chicago. But when you have people who care about you, who are mentoring you and tell you that that's not normal and that it shouldn't be normal, it does impact these young people's lives, because it makes them more hopeful to see a greater Chicago, to be able to walk outside and say, see you later versus be safe. So I think that's super important. That's what we do. Make it a routine to share space and healing.
And Pablo, I want to go to you. Someone made a comment about we need to get our Latino TV, radio, and sports celebrities involved. How is it that we are 65% of urban radio listeners and we are not behind the mic? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, let's do it. Let's share it. Let's plug it. Let's feel it. Let's go for it. I mean, people that have the connections also need to make the connections, right? Because it's hard for somebody like me that's got a full-time job, running or behind the scenes of an organization, just to make those connections. So if we don't know them, that's where we need the linking. And I think that's where we need this community in general to help us with for that specific question. But yeah, that would be exciting. Come on down. And what community member is not going to want to come out for them, right? So
I mean, this week actually we have one of the biggest Latino music festivals happening in Grand Park, which is involving art and music. And touching on that, like you mentioned, it's hard to have a full-time job trying to keep this afloat for the people in the neighborhood. So you really do believe, especially, what do you think, Mayra, that people, especially artists, need to get involved at this point?
I think if you have a voice, it is our responsibility to get involved. I feel like any moment you can stand up for under-resourced communities, struggling people, you should always take that opportunity to use your voice and your power. Because, Sueños, right? Like, we should be there. We should be bringing resources into that space. Everybody's going to be at Sueños. So why not meet people where they're at? That's one thing that we should always do.
And Dr. Alonzo, you mentioned a little bit about, your upbringing and growing up. What is something that you want to share, with those parents or with, a younger version of you?
Well, I think one of the biggest parts is that, again, we don't have to do this alone. I actually served almost 25 years on the U.S.-Mexico border. So I get to see the students coming on top of the trains and traveling from Central America to the United States and dealing with all the trauma of being an immigrant and being in a new environment. But the thing is, again, we don't do this alone. We got to be champions for this. And And we can't allow violence to be acceptable, that we become desensitized to it. We got to stand up for our little brothers and little sisters that are in some of the detention centers. They should be in a school, they should be in a program, they should be painting or playing music. That's what they need to do. But it's really important that, again, we band together and we be that loud voice like Mayra's talking about. We got to champion for, again, our people and, again, our students. They deserve it.
Are you nervous about this summer? I mean, it almost seems not normal to ask that question, but are you nervous about this summer?
So as an educator, as a principal, to me, you know, if I have 600 kids or 1,000 kids, they're my kids. They're like my children. So at the end of the day, I'm worried that they have a place to sleep, a safe place to go to. So yes, I am nervous about it. But a lot of that is, again, I am reaching out to my partners. I am making sure that I'm working with my parents and with community groups to make sure that our environment stays as safe as possible. We are doing everything to extend even our security and safety officers so that, again, our students, there's eyes on the street, because a lot of our students ride or participating in programs, they ride CTA and they're on, whether they're on the L or whether they're on a city bus, you know, they're dealing with a lot of this wherever they are. So it's really important that those eyes are always there and that, again, we continue to work together to make sure that they're safe.
And Pablo, I want to go to you and ask you a quick question, because it seems like Pilsen Arts Community House really came from a passion project. You talked about your family, you talked about your mom. You know, I feel like I want to dig deeper with you. You know, what else, you know, what every day that you wake up and you do this work, you know, what drives you?
Just being open. I think being open drives me, right? Having that space. We get contacted 20 times, you know, a week to use our space or to, and sometimes it's something simple like a baby shower, or sometimes they want to do painting projects and they want other organizations to reach out to us. But it's a lot of us giving to the community, which we don't mind. We love that. But it's rare occasions when somebody offers to give us something or donate to us. I mean, we just donated spray paint to 2 organizations over the weekend, and it was from leftover mural projects. And I know they're going to go to the youth, and like Pilsen Alliance was one of them. We just had some extra crates of spray paint, and it's kind of like right now a youth-led group right now. And I think that's just really important to keep giving and keep. I'm a passionate guy. I mean, everyone that's met me knows that. But doing
what would you say that, you know, you would need more of right now at this point?
Just resources, connections, or like people that are in the chat that are like, hit me up, like, let's make connections, email us. I think a lot of people say, how can we help you? But that's it. And then it's hard for us to come up with the programming and the things. Like we can, but we're already kind of spread out too thin, right? But let's get together, let's talk, let's engage, and together we come up with wonderful things. I mean, we got programming around the clock, 365. We didn't even shut down for the COVID because people needed that space and they needed to come somewhere.
They definitely did art. They definitely needed art. I definitely agree with that. Now, before we leave, I'd like to close out on a positive note. What's one event or program open to youth that you're looking forward to this summer? Now, Mayra, I want to start with you.
Yes, I actually have 2. So with Increase the Peace, like Casa Norte and other Black and Brown organizations throughout Chicago, we are going to have a Black and Brown Unity Car Parade, June 3rd at 5 p.m. at, I believe, let me check my notes. It's going to be at Marquette Park. So I can send flyer, things like that, details below. And we are also hiring youth 14 to 24 years old for our summer programming. It's going to be super fun. It's going to be in person. So that's what I have.
Tell me more about that, the June 3rd.
So yeah, 3 years ago, we decided, boom, there was tensions between Black and Brown communities, people. I believe it was George Floyd's murder at that point. And we saw that Black and Brown people were just going at each other, right? I don't know how that happened, but we decided that's not how it's going to go. Like, let's go against the systems that are against us and unite together. So we were able to organize about 500 cars for our car parade. So it's gonna hopefully be huge this summer as well. So June 3rd at 5, Marquette Park.
That's really awesome. How about you, Dr. Alonzo?
For us, again, we have a lot of summer programming. I know that we have the One Summer Chicago. We have a lot of different initiatives that are going forth. We're going to continue, for example, we work with the Greater Chicago Food Depository on doing food donations to the community. We were doing it 3 times a week during the pandemic. It's slowed down a little bit, but we still continue to do that. Right now, we're trying to help out with a lot of our families needing help with, for example, baby formula. Those are things that, again, our community is in need of. So it's really important to do that. And again, we're going to have, aside from that, a lot of art programs, a lot of music programs, along with some of the schooling.
All right, awesome. And I'm gonna leave it to you, Pablo.
Well, you know, we have our doors open, right? And every month we have a new exhibit. We have upcoming artist Raul Ciesnega from Mexico City. That's going to be in June. In July, we have a great, we're going to have an anniversary show that people are going to be, invited to. And our doors are open. I think they need to follow us on social media, the Pilsen Arts Community House on Instagram or Facebook. I think those are the ones where we're posting mostly. And we got a fun, social media experience for people to follow. And we do a arts festival called Hecho En. That's going to be coming in August as well, where we could use some youth volunteers or just people want to get involved, artistically involved or participate as well. Because we've had some young artists come and put up booths and tents and start as young artistic entrepreneurs. And I think that's a really exciting thing. And so that's Hecho En coming in August. And it's really no booze. It's really an art focused, we want it to be kind of like a Black and Brown Renegade for people that don't get invited to Renegade, right? So I think that's important thing that's coming up. And we always had Pilsen Open Studios that we're also in charge of now, that we've inherited from the old time artists that started that, and we're going on almost 20 years for that as well. So that's in October.
That's really cool. I actually came across your studio when I was passing by, and I loved how it was like the clear windows and you just saw all the art. And then I remember, if I'm not wrong, across the street there's a panaderia.
Nuevo León,
Yes, it was
people
really
in
good
Pilsen
because they had
know
the
they grew up on
conchas
that.
with the ice cream. So they already had.
They got their thing, and we definitely collaborate with them, and they help us out when we can, and we help them out however we can. So the partnerships are really important.
I also want to mention one last thing. I think it's also really cool that I don't know if you guys agree or see as well, that it's been really inspiring to see even younger people wanting to be part of a change. We're talking about, not only little kids, but the youth, like young kids wanting to be part of activism and learning how to make a business. Are you guys seeing more of that as well?
I definitely am. A lot of young people are so creative. You would be amazed at how much talent is in our communities. We just need to give these youth the platforms to be able to show that off. I feel like a lot of youth are too shy, like they're too shy to show what they really got. But we need to encourage these youth, and we need to build a generation of leaders so that we continue to see the sustainable change in our communities.
Mara, you were one, you talked about it, you were one of those kids at one point. What is something that you want to tell them? If one of them is watching, what quieres decir? What do you want to tell, the younger version of you as well?
Que los amo. I believe in them. I believe in young people. I think that young people are so underestimated. And, the reason why I'm here is because I was invested in, I see Berto, I see Luz, Lisa. These are all people who have invested in me and who have believed in me over the years. And that's what I think young people need, is somebody to believe in them. Even if it's just one person, eso es lo que falta. I think that's what it is.
And there's a lot of hope out there.
There is, and they needed to see that.
Well, thank you so much for all of you joining. You guys are all inspirational and doing such great work, and I'm looking forward to connect with each of you down the line. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
all right,
everyone.
All right, so that's all we have here. And again, thank you so much for participating in today's Chicago Tonight Latino Voices, a WTTW News Community Conversation. Be sure to tune into Chicago Tonight, Latino Voices and Black Voices on Saturdays and Sundays, starting at 6 p.m. on Channel 11. Now, we shared a short form in the chat. If you click it, you can submit ideas, stories, topics, and issues to us that we should be covering. Now, please take a moment to fill that out and share your thoughts. And please join Chicago Tonight Black Voices host Paris Freeman for next month's community conversation, Monday, June 27th at noon. This virtual event is in conjunction with Hiding in Plain Sight, Your Mental Illness, a new 4-hour documentary by executive producer Ken Burns, co-directed by Eric Ernst and Christopher Lauren Ernst. Thank you again for joining us for this conversation. Take care.